Welcome to Butterflies of Wisdom, everyone. This morning on this beautiful St. Patrick's Day of 2017, I have Jeff Reno with me, and Jeff has spent his career in the automotive industry, but he feels a passion for telling stories, and he's been named as one of the top storytellers in the country. And so without further ado, before I screw Jeff's bio up majorly, I'm going to let Jeff take it away.
Well, thank you for that. It's great to be here. You actually flatter me more than I think I deserve, but I appreciate the connection. I've gotten to publish some things, and I've had a lot of really great response, so hopefully people will feel the same about this. But thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. And please explain to my fan base more of what you do.
So I have spent my career in advertising, mostly with a variety of things. You mentioned automotive, which was a big part of it. It's actually what launched me. But I've gotten to touch a lot of different things, which has been very fun. But as I've gotten older in my career, I've realized that consumers don't really like advertising, right? I mean, who likes TV commercials or radio commercials? So what I started to do is content marketing. And content marketing is great, right? It's podcasts, it's blogs, it's email marketing that's done well, that kind of thing. So as that, I'm in charge of blogging for my company. I do a monthly magazine that I put out. I'm also in charge of our search engine optimization. So I do a lot of that for my current work. I'm also going to be speaking on brand community development coming up in September, which I'm very excited about. And I'm also a very outspoken advocate of behavioral health awareness and a wannabe author on the subject.
I know you are. And I think that mental illness, and Jeff, you would probably agree with me on this one, mental illness is so huge in this country.
It is. And as somebody who suffers himself, it's very hard for me to sit and listen. So whenever something goes wrong, the first thing people, quote unquote, blame is mental illness. I feel like it only heightens the stigma that people who suffer from these sort of issues are a problem on society. And I think that the stigma that continues to grow only makes it harder on people who suffer from these things, right? We're not alone. We're not the only ones who suffer, but it's very hard for us to open up and talk about it because we're afraid of how society views us. So my hope is that the work that I'm doing eventually will help people feel more comfortable sort of in their own skin, to open up and talk about their experiences, and to just frankly know that they are not the only ones out there, and there are other people who have felt the exact same ways.
Well, that's wonderful. And if you don't mind me asking, when did you get diagnosed with your mental illness?
So I was officially diagnosed with what's called acute rapid cycling bipolar disorder in 2007, and we were able to back diagnose me to when I was a child. Bipolar disorder, as many may know, is something that sort of forces you to switch between two different states of mind. You've got the really depressive stage and then the manic stage. And manic is where you feel like you're on top of the world. Nothing's going to bring you down. You can do whatever you want. And then the depression is really overwhelming. There are huge thoughts of hopelessness. For me personally, there's been lots of suicidal thoughts in my life. There's also some extreme paranoia that goes on with some people. I've dealt with that in the past. And it's a really difficult thing to deal with. And as I've gotten older, it's sort of transitioned into what's called rapid cycling, which means you have the ability to cycle between any one of these states as many as 4 times a year. I, however, am acute, which means I can cycle at a much higher pace than that. I've been known to cycle several times in an hour. It's physically exhausting. My doctor, was very concerned for me, but I think I positioned myself with it a little bit better. I said, it's nice to know that I have the ability to pull myself out of one of the 2 stages very easily. Well, not easily, but much faster than people who, don't deal with the illness in sort of the way I manage it. But yes, 2007, and we were able to sort of back diagnose to when I was younger. I specifically remember a time when I was in 5th grade when I was experiencing what you would call a mania. And I remember in the process of it, somebody was like, "What's wrong with you?" I was like, "I don't know, but I know I'm going to feel terrible in a few minutes." And then I did, right? It's because I'd come down off of that sort of mental high, so to speak, and I was now in sort of the mental low. So it's something that I've dealt with for a very long time.
Now, I'm going to ask you this, and you don't have to answer this live if you don't want to, but how has your depression affected your job?
That's a really great question. So I feel like I did a pretty decent job of managing it for a long time. So when I was diagnosed in 2007, I was medicated for it, and I took medication for a few years. And then I got married, and I didn't have insurance, and I just couldn't afford the medication any longer. Medication is incredibly expensive. It's very difficult to manage, not only from a cost standpoint for the medicine, but just to sort of see somebody who can prescribe it to you. So I went off the medicine, and I was off the medicine for probably 3 or 4 years. And I feel like I did okay with it. But then in 2013, I had my first child, and then I changed jobs. And something within all of that was way more than I was able to handle. And I tumbled into a severe depression that I haven't been in before. Well, I won't say that because I've been in some bad places other times in my life, but it was the first time since I've been diagnosed that I was that bad. Like I would have to walk away from my desk periodically. I would have to go out to my car and I would just sob. I couldn't manage it. I couldn't handle it. And for me, what was the hardest of this was I knew that I needed help and I couldn't find it. I called a number of different offices, and I had several tell me that they couldn't see me for almost 3 months because of how backlogged they were to see a new patient. I even had a couple tell me that they felt I needed more help than they were prepared to give, which, in my opinion, that's probably not something you should tell somebody who already thinks they're crazy, right? How about, we think that you should see a specialist in this, not kind of the verbiage they gave, but it was very difficult. It all really added up, and it was really hard to the point where I ended up leaving the job. I just couldn't manage it. But I was lucky enough to finally connect with a doctor. It took almost 6 weeks. And it's helped me a lot. I'm back on medication now full time. I still cycle a little bit, like there is no cure, but it does help me manage it a little bit better than what I was able to do beforehand.
Okay, now I'm going to put a call out in the middle of this interview, and Jeff, you would probably echo my call here. If you guys ever feel suicidal or depression coming on, which happened to a lot of people with physical disabilities and mental disabilities on top of depression, please reach out to someone. I know there's 1-800 numbers. I know there is support groups. There's me. You can reach out to me and say, help. You can reach out to Jeff and say, help. We just don't want you to go down that path and think you're alone.
Yeah, I'm no professional, but I am more than willing to open up and listen. Like, for me, the hardest thing I've done, I think, in my entire life is opening up and admitting that I suffer from bipolar disorder. It was very, very scary. Like, I still remember writing the piece. It was like I had an elephant sitting on my chest because I actually published it online. And when I hit the publish button, I was scared to death. I had to basically walk away from the internet for a few days just because I couldn't handle what sort of the repercussions of that would be. And luckily, so far, there haven't been any. I have, however, been refused life insurance because I suffer from bipolar disorder. So I guess there have been some repercussions, but it hasn't been so severe that I've lost my job. It hasn't been so severe that it's impacted my family. So I guess I've been lucky sort of in that. But if you ever do need to talk to someone and you can't find somebody professional who can actually help, there are people out there who are willing to listen. And more often than not, I think you'd be surprised, people out there who can really kind of understand what you're going through. We obviously can't necessarily make you feel better, but I found that just knowing what was wrong with me helps me feel a lot better. It was like, I'm not making this up. this is all real things that I'm dealing with. I hate to use the term crazy, but it's like, I'm not crazy for feeling this. And people who suffer from mental illness, they aren't crazy either, right? These are legitimate health issues that people suffer from. And I think we all just get lost in thinking, well, why don't you just be happy? It's just a state of mind. Well, I know for me specifically, right, I have a chemical imbalance in my brain so that my brain cannot properly balance the amount, I believe it's serotonin in my brain, right, which is why sometimes I'm manic and sometimes I'm severely depressed. So, you know, it's not just as easy as going out on a sunshiny day and putting a smile on, right? It is incredibly, incredibly difficult. I think about all the people we've lost, and I apologize if I'm talking too much. Please let me know because I can talk about this all day. But I remember when Robin Williams died and we found out that he'd committed suicide, just sitting there and thinking about, oh, my goodness gracious, this guy is just the funniest man. He's the nicest man. Everybody had the most wonderful stories to talk about him. And then to hear about the severe depression that he was dealing with and he was facing, it really made me realize this can impact anyone around you. People who you think are the happiest people in the world are actually terribly hurting inside. So don't assume that your friends are okay. Always be there. Always ask them how they're doing. Always offer your support. And, you know, just sort of be a friend. You know, the best thing that you can offer to anyone is a hand. And all you can do is hope they take it.
I definitely agree. I know you didn't talk too much because bipolar depression is one of those hidden mental disabilities. I almost said physical disabilities, but it can manifest into a physical disability, can it?
It can be debilitating. There's no doubt about that. I mean, there are times where I wanted to just curl up in bed and not move and not focus, you know, and it's interesting in how it can force you to shut down, not want to leave the house, want to quit everything you're doing. I mentioned earlier the paranoia that kind of comes with it at times. I actually was at South by Southwest this past week, and I met a gentleman after I talked about sort of my bipolar disorder and what I deal with, and he came up to me and said, I actually had to leave my job for, I believe he said, 7 or 8 months because I suffered from such severe paranoia that I had to be institutionalized for a little while. Like, it is debilitating, and I completely agree. Like, you're unable to function at times because of what we deal with.
And I am so impressed, and I'll say this honestly, that you came out and talked about it with me honestly and openly. And now, on a happier note, no pun intended, what is your favorite book that you can recommend to my listeners if you can focus and read a book?
Well, it's funny you ask that question because I, as a writer, I have read so many books growing up. Like, as you might be able to imagine, as somebody who sort of dealt with bipolar depression most of my life, it was very hard for me to make friends when I was younger because I was two different people, right? They didn't know if I was this manic, happy guy or this really depressed kid. So I read a lot of books. I read a lot of middle grade books. I read all of the Boxcar Children I could get my hands on. I read everything by Matt Christopher, who's a writer of sports books for young boys and girls who are interested in that kind of thing. My favorite series in sort of that genre was the Animorph books, which were kind of superhero-esque, which I'm still a big fan of today. Just the idea that these people have powers and they have their own problems and are trying to overcome them to do great things. I mean, that's something that I've always wished I could do and be. It's funny. I actually don't do as much reading now as I used to. I don't feel like I have time, but that's why I have a audiobook app. And I believe that I just looked at this. I have listened to nearly 17 days worth of audiobooks, and I currently own 47 Star Wars books in my digital library. Yes, I said Star Wars books. They're amazing. You can make fun of me all you want, but I love them. And I think my favorite one of them that I've read recently was called Lost Stars. It takes place in the Star Wars universe between episodes number 4 and 6. And essentially it's about two kids who grow up in Imperial space. And it sort of takes its trajectory sort of off Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. So you can kind of imagine how that would work in the Star Wars universe. I found the book enthralling. I never wanted to turn it off. I'd say put it down, but it was an audiobook. It was very, very good. If you have the chance to pick it up and read it, I would definitely recommend it. It is a YA novel, so know that going in. But I found the book really, really great. And if you're a fan of Star Wars, it really sort of connects dots between the films and gives you sort of a background on what people thought, believed as being a part of the Empire in the Star Wars universe.
And I hate to tell you this, Jeff, but you might have another book that you might have to read because it's on Audible. I know that because it's my book, and it's on Win, and it's on Audible. And so those of you that want to get deeper into my story of having cerebral palsy, go ahead and do that and tell me what you guys think of it, because the reason why I put it on Audible is not only to help people with physical disabilities and mental disabilities, but to help people with depression who may not be able to hold a book, and to help people on the go, too, just because we are all so busy nowadays that we can't physically sit and read a book. So that's why I put my books on audio tape.
That'll definitely be the next one I add to my account. I can guarantee you that. For me, the reason why I did so much reading when I was younger is because this sounds terribly morbid, and it really is, but I legitimately hated myself. I loathed myself. I hated my life. And books were my ability to sort of escape every day and be somebody else for a little while. You know, I've also become very big into comic books and graphic novels and video games because they're all stories, right? And I think that's why I've become a storyteller myself. It's because I want to provide an outlet for other people who sort of face the things I faced and give them a way to sort of escape what them, so to speak. I think that's really a motivating factor behind what I do and why I continue to try to do what I do.
And Jeff, when it comes to content marketing, what is your favorite piece of content marketing that you have seen and you would recommend to all my listeners?
So this is probably a different kind of content than what you may be expecting, but it's sort of a visual piece that was done on Instagram. I believe it was done by Mazda in Canada, and it's absolutely fantastic. It was sort of a drive through the seasons. I believe if you search Mazda Canada on Instagram, it'll come up with a story on Ad Age that sort of talks all about it. But essentially what they did was every day they released a new image. And sometimes that image contained a video, sometimes it didn't. But as they pieced together, it was sort of this beautifully animated drive throughout Canada during the seasons and the holidays. I mean, it was gorgeous. If I ever have the chance to do an Instagram campaign like that, I would jump on it in a second. Even today, it still inspires me, and it still gives me lots of ideas and thoughts on what I would like to do if I ever am able to do sort of a content campaign on Instagram.
Okay. What is your favorite tool in business that you can't live without?
For me personally, that's Twitter. Twitter is my very favorite thing. I know that there are a lot of people out there who are just like, man, Twitter's not that great. It's not making money. I don't know how people use it. But I have met so many incredible people on Twitter. I've been lucky enough to actually meet people through Twitter chats. And I don't know if you're familiar with Twitter chats, but essentially it's like a 1 hour time frame where people share a unique hashtag and then they have conversations about a topic that is moderated by a person or business. And I've been able to connect with a lot of really great people. And what's the most fun about Twitter is what I call Twitter in real life, right? Meeting people that you've had conversations for a long time on Twitter with and actually meeting them in person. I was lucky enough to be able to do that with two different people. Yeah, I was lucky enough to do that with two different people at South by Southwest this week. And it's just incredible to be able to put a face and a voice to the name and the words that you keep reading by those people.
Yeah, Twitter and me are best friends. Facebook and me are not. And
yeah,
saying that, Facebook is more handicapped accessible than Twitter, I've found to make Twitter my friend, but Facebook not so much, because Facebook is, you can't see the post as well, and you're talking to people that you're already friends with. With Twitter, you can punch in a hashtag, and every person who punches in that hashtag can find your Twitter conversation and jump right in.
100%. And from a business standpoint, right, it allows you to be found and be seen depending on the conversations that are going on. There are always some missteps. Businesses try too hard to jump onto these hashtags to sell. To me, Twitter isn't about selling. Twitter's about creating relationships. As a content marketer and somebody who really believes in sort of brand communities, the most important thing you can do today as an advertiser or a company is to connect with your customer base. Because if you can create sort of these personal relationships, people will find themselves more loyal towards you. And eventually what's going to happen is you're going to find some of these people become advocates for your brand. And essentially what that means is they start going out and advertising your brand on your behalf. So if you've done a good job of doing this, you can actually walk yourself back away from the conversation and let them advertise for you. It's incredibly fascinating to me. And as somebody who didn't have a lot of friends growing up, especially with sort of the interest that I was interested in, the internet was an amazing thing for me, right? I'll be the first one to tell you, I see myself as kind of a big nerd. I do enjoy superheroes. I do enjoy graphic novels. I do enjoy video games, and I never really had anyone to talk about that with before. But then the internet came around, and I was able to go online and meet so many people who shared so many things with me. It really made me feel connected with people in ways I never felt before. So I think to me that's what Twitter is best at, is specifically sort of the relationship building and the relationship management.
I definitely agree 100%. Now, where can the people find you, Jeff, and how can people get a hold of you?
Well, they're welcome to email me at jvreno, that's RENOE, @gmail.com, or they can find me at Twitter, at Reno, that's Reno like the city with an E on the end. Those are probably the two places you're most likely to find me and most likely to get responses from me.
So you're very active on Twitter. Now, Jeff, I know I told you via text that you could ask me 2 to 3 questions at the end of this interview, and you said I've been thinking about those questions for a while. So now I turn the mic over to you and let you ask the questions of me.
So you've been doing this for a long time now. Your back library of episodes is impressive. So I guess my question is, how has your idea of sort of what this project was going to be evolved since you first started it?
Well, how my vision was documenting my story. That was my true vision of documenting my story based upon I Come a Win, my book, which could be found on Amazon and Audible. But what it turned into is this fascinating project of me getting to interview thought leaders like yourself. And so it's turned into a little monster that now I can't control, that every single time an episode comes out on Mondays and Thursdays and the occasional Sunday, I'm getting 100 downloads per episode. And here I thought no one was going to listen to my story. So my vision for this podcast has really changed and really evolved.
No, that sounds great. It's amazing how things live organically, and if you're willing to sort of watch how they turn, and you're willing to sort of take a different fork in the road than what you were supposed to be, things can really grow to be so much more than what you ever initially expected them to be.
Yeah, exactly. And I agree. Twitter has been one of those instrumental tools in this whole podcasting process.
So I guess my next question would be, knowing what you know now and sort of seeing the success you've had, what do you want to do next? What's your next goal? What's that next project that you see sort of off on the horizon that you're wanting to reach out toward? Even if you're not there yet, where do you want to get to eventually?
I want to be a New York Times bestselling author with cerebral palsy, and I want to be a syndicated podcast host. So if anyone is listening to this podcast interview with Jeff and can help me out with contacts at CNN or XM Radio, please shoot me a tweet, and then we'll get that looking. Because I think that, Jeff, and you'll probably agree with me, mental disabilities need to have a voice, physical disabilities need to have a voice, and bipolar depression needs to have a voice too.
And you actually have given me the chance with that to tell you that I'm actually trying to write a book that will hopefully give a voice to people like this. So if that book ever sees the light of day, I'll hope it will have the ability to touch as many people as you've had the chance to touch with sort of what you're doing. And my goodness, with everything you've accomplished, I can only imagine that you're going to reach that goal, and I'll be on the sidelines rooting you along every step of the way.
Well, I appreciate that, Jeff. And how I magically published my books is through Amazon's Create Space. So what I'm offering my fans is, and this includes you, Jeff, is if you just sit down and write the manuscript, I'll help you guys publish a book to have that book see the light of day.
No, that sounds great. Once I'm to that point, I'll definitely let you know.
Yeah, because a lot of people want to write a book, they just don't know how.
No, I mean, I remember the first time I sat down to write this book. I wrote the first chapter and I loved it, and then I didn't know where to go from there. And then I sat down for a long time with this writer's block, and I realized like 5 steps on how to break through, which have really helped me to the point where I finished the novel. It was 120,000 words, which was way too long for what I wanted. And then I cut it down to 94, but I'm still kind of trying to find that secret sauce and trying to make sure that it's written in a way that people actually enjoy reading it and want to read it. And once I get there, I'm hoping that maybe one day it will see the light of day.
Well, I will be cheering you on to finish that book, because the story you told me about having bipolar is amazing. And what is your last closing words for this interview?
I think the best thing that I can say after what we've spoken about is, if you deal with any of the things we've talked about, please know that you are not alone. There are other people out there who have felt the way you do. There are other people out there who are willing to listen to your experiences and to talk to them. Even if you can't afford treatment, even if you can't afford medication that you may need, we're at least here to talk, and hopefully together we can find a way to get you sort of what you need to help eventually feel better.
And I definitely agree, and that goes for anyone who has a newly diagnosed child with cerebral palsy, or a newly diagnosed child with bipolar, or a newly diagnosed adult in their life with bipolar, or a newly diagnosed paralysis, or just reach out and let us talk to you. We're not trained experts by any means, but Jeff and I, through our networks, could find you trained networks. We're not sending you to WebMD by any means. We're not sending you Google. by any means, but just start talking to people, and that should help you on the path to heal.
And that's a major part of it, right? Together we can heal together, hopefully, because sometimes healing on your own is the hardest thing you could ever try to do, and I don't wish that on anyone.
I don't wish that on anyone either. And I hope you guys enjoyed another fabulous episode with Jeff and I on Butterflies of Wisdom. This podcast is actually sponsored by Grace by Grit. Grace by Grit is an athletic line out of California, San Diego to be exact. And Grace by Grit is generously offering a 20% off code to you guys. So please go check that out. And this episode is also sponsored by Go Kidder, Kitter. And Twitter is a hashtag app for Twitter, only on desktop, and they put the hashtags with your tweets. So please go check that out in the show notes. And again, I thank Jeff for coming on and sharing his story and asking me those incredible questions. And I hope you guys will find inspiration in this episode. And please, 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 as Jeff and I both said, we can be found on Twitter. I'm under Win Kelly, Kelly, Charles, Charles, and that can also be found in the show notes as well. And again, it's Win, W-I-N, Kelly, Kelly, Charles, Charles, and of course, that's no spaces, and of course, the @ sign. And I appreciate everyone's time. I appreciate Jeff's time this morning, and I hope you guys enjoyed another fabulous episode. Thanks to you guys.
Thank you.